They're looking for that person with that name that can live
Right.
in this area.
And yeah, and it's a lot of just a lot more easier legal control too. All right. The other, so obviously a lot of society is developed around this patriarchal structure or patriarchalism. This is a political theory from the 1600s that countries like England defended. It's this idea that the king is absolute like the father, just as the father in the household is absolute. So patriarchalism is this political theory that's developed like in England in the 1600s. That you should give the king absolute power, just like the father has absolute power in the house. So like Charles I, James I supported this idea of the king as being like the father of the state. So supporters of this idea supported the conjugal family ideal, which is just basically what that means is traditional hierarchy. So the conjugal family ideal is this traditional family hierarchy that placed the father at the top. And this same mentality was rolled into the monarchy. The monarchy has to be at top because then he has to use that authority to maintain a stable, orderly country. All right, gender and class roles. Gender and class roles. Family structure also influenced the patriarchal structure of the larger social order. So family structure also influenced the patriarchal structure of the larger social order. An example of that is primogeniture, which is where the family keeps their legacy and property intact by passing down just to one child, not to multiple children.
So what happens if they have all girls?
Then it's usually the eldest daughter until there's a son.
Or like the eldest daughter's husband, maybe?
Well, basically, yeah, whenever the wife, whenever she marries a husband, that a lot of that property transfers to him as well. The only claim a daughter could have from their parents was what's called a dowry. Basically, you would get some inheritance, some kind of property from your family, something of wealth from your family whenever you got married as like a gift. So a dowry was a transfer of property or money that the wife would receive upon marriage. So obviously, depending on how wealthy you were, it depends on what your dowry was. But that was a very common practice for a long, even like into like 1800s America, that was still a thing where people gave like these gifts, a dowry gift to the bride. Wives could actually determine who received their dowry upon their death. So like if it was like property or a lot of money, they had legal authority over the dowry as well, so they could decide like it may not be their husband, it might be somebody else, or like one of their children. Husbands were only entitled to claim up to a third of their dowry during marriage. So husbands were entitled only to claim up to a third of their dowry during marriage. Women even had the right to sue husbands if they thought their dowry was being used improperly. So they had a right to sue their husbands if they felt like it was being used improperly by them. That's one of the few areas women had power authority over was this property or money they got from their marriage, from their parents. The male-dominated structure existed mostly in upper classes. So this structure mostly exists in upper classes. In lower classes, because you're all kind of having to work, it's more egalitarian. So like upper classes has more of this patriarchal structure, like dad's in charge, dad's is end all be all. But in the lower societies and rural areas especially, you have a lot more egalitarian feel because mom, dad are working, kids are probably working, whether it be on a farm or in a cottage. It kind of has a sense of more equality than you have in the upper classes. So, exactly.
Rather be like
equal and poor and happy.
Poor or submissive.
Right.
Rich.
I
I saw a video of this girl. She was like, "I really am finna cry because women actually fought for my right to go to work," and I was like,
And I'm not going to.
They did that to me.
Who fought for our right to not work? That's my question.
What?
What?
What right to not work?
Poor rural households were then and were more egalitarian, and men and women engaged in more different but complementary tasks in these lower income households. So women and men engaged in more different but complementary tasks. So not like men doing all the work and women being more submissive. Family units in the early modern era function as economic units as well. So family units in the early modern era also functioned as economic units, with their husbands and wives contributing with tasks accomplishing needed work. So family units in the early modern era function as economic units as well, with husbands and wives contributing with tasks accomplishing whatever needed work they had. So basically, like the cottage industry, right? Man did the loom, the woman did all the what?
Thread.
Yeah, thread and spinning and stuff, right? So they basically are both working for their overall economic chunk of money, right? Or if you're a peasant farmer, you were what?
Farming together.
Yeah, farming together, right? So it's either way, like upper classes, who's really only working? The males are, right? Whereas here it's like it's male and female. All right, moving on to women's intellect and education. Women's intellect and education. Pre-Reformation, convents were havens for unmarried women. So you couldn't get a husband, just go join a convent. And in the convent, women actually were more in power because it was all run by women. So all the leadership, all the roles were all done by women. So like a lot of single women could join a convent if they couldn't get a land of man. Convent, CONVENT.
So convent if they didn't get married by a certain age.
Right. And within the convent itself, they could get educated, they could learn to read and write, but also over time grow to develop leadership positions and lead the convent itself.
So was that like just for unmarried? Like even if a woman was married, but like her.
No, if you're in a convent, if you're going nun, you got to be married to God, so you can't be married to a man.
Oh, okay.
It's a nunnery?
No. Post-Reformation, it became harder for unmarried women to do that because a lot of countries become Protestant, thus there's no convent. So after the Reformation, it kind of hurt some of those unmarried women to find that role because convents ceased to exist in some countries because they become Protestant. But after the Reformation, there are some more opportunities for women. So after the Reformation, there are some more opportunities for women to explore new options as far as their life goes. Many women could use their homes as a way to teach the gospel or feed the hungry. So a lot of unmarried women who maybe don't have any kind of job or work could use their homes as a way to teach the gospel or feed the hungry. Some took to writing, poetry, theology, memoirs. So some would write. Kind of like old crazy Emily Dickinson, right? Up in the attic, writing poetry. In some areas, divorce becomes more of an option post-Reformation. So again, that depends on, if you're living in a Catholic country, that's not the case. But like some of the Protestant areas would allow for divorce to be a little bit easier. With the Reformation taking place, it makes the woman's role in the household more important and the family unit more important because now you're not so dependent upon the clergy or the church anymore for like your Christian upbringing or your Christian development. So the family unit then becomes more important for education for your kids as well as Christianizing your kids as well too, because now you lose that church aspect in general.
So the women were seen as like the teachers?
Basically, in the household, correct. So the family becomes the center of Christian life after the Reformation. Now men and women now men and women both could communicate with God. So women were encouraged to seek education, mainly because, like, okay, it's a means to an end. They need to seek education so they can do what?
Teach kids.
Teach the Bible, right?
So it's kind of like Republican motherhood. It's like it's
Right.
important that we have women to help the kids.
Right, exactly. But only so they can become better citizens down the road, right? Not so much the woman herself can be like enhanced and like seek agency and have a job or whatever else, right? None of that, right?
Yeah.
But
Kill enough kids.
right, have them get education so they can be better.
Are we educating girl children or just
Sure, yeah.
boys?
So they get better education.
Their children.
Exactly.
You gotta start them young.
Anyway, so how much education should be available was discussed in countries like in England and Italy, and that becomes a growing issue. Like, should women be able to enter into university or any kind of upper level education like men? That's the big question, right? So that brings us to the woman question.
The woman question.
An academic debate developed in France in the mid-1500s over whether women were fit to attend university. So an academic debate began in France in the mid-1500s over whether or not women were fit to attend university. This, in French, it's called the Querelle de Femmes.
Ew, what did you say?
Every time there's a word like you can't really pronounce, you always like lower your voice.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what I found whenever you videoed the notes for me and you wrote Querelle de Dames or something. I typed it in Google because I couldn't read it because it was blurry on when you wrote it on board, and that popped up and I was like, that's not what he's talking about. But
That's what we're talking about. It's the same
Well,
thing.
And she was talking about
no, in that
Yeah.
point in time 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
This is not what you
Yeah,
were talking
you said dom, but pivot dom.
Yeah, that's what popped up in Google.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's right. So Dom is like single female, whereas this is like plural female. So it's the same idea though.
Okay.
But if you see a bunch of French words together like this, and you see femme in it, right?
Something with the MM.
Right. Right. It's talking about the ladies.
Black.
So here are the two sides of the argument. Number one, or the first side. One side argued that women were naturally inferior to men,
Okay.
and this was unchangeable.
Okay, Russo. Great.
One side argued that women were naturally inferior to men, and this was unchangeable. They cited 3 reasons. God made man first.
Shut up. What?
And he got it better the second time. Gotta try again.
Didn't God, I don't know if I'm right, didn't God make people made out of like dust first?
Yeah.
Right.
For being like
And you were made from our ribs. So.
And then he killed everyone because they
Not
said.
Moses. I mean, not Noah.
Oh, you're right.
Men were physically stronger.
You got me there.
Men were physically stronger.
I knew some weak men.
Yeah, just like.
And Eve was deceived by Adam and thus brought down humanity.
Eve was deceived
Adam.
by Adam.
And
I'm sorry, Eve was deceived by the snake, who then deceived Adam. Sorry, Eve deceived Adam, that then led to the downfall of humanity.
I think
So it's all Eve's fault.
if men were strong-
God and Adam were tight, but best buds, and then Eve had to go ruin it all with her snake apple-eating self.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's how that story went.
And he did it.
So that was one side, right? The other side argued that men oppress women
Ew.
to maintain their own social status and power.
Us, never. Never.
So the other side argued that men oppress women to maintain their own social status and power.
What?
No, I
Are you
can't be
being
right.
selfish about power? No.
Hey, stop talking so much.
What?
You're
Hush your mouth.
You're inferior to my power. Yeah, exactly. Eve was actually the one who was deceived. Eve was the one who was deceived. And they also argue that women's inferior position was due to their lack of education and therefore changeable.
What? No.
So the reason why they're lacking behind is because they're not as educated as men are.
No.
No, that can't be right. No, this can't be right.
These French are crazy.
Exactly.
So the question then becomes, were the limits set by God or by humans themselves? And were men suppressing women?
Whoa. That's a big question.
Uh,
No, the question about you said with God, you suppressing yourself. Wait, repeat that again?
It's basically summarizing what I just said. It said, the question then becomes, were limits of women set by God or by men?
You're gonna say something
If
you're
religion
proud of.
didn't exist, would you treat people?
I don't think that would change because, I mean, if you look at, if you look at how early tribes and everything is developed, like the people who became chiefs or leaders were the strongest. So I still think you had a very male-dominated society early on.
Like physical world, yes, like we're always gonna be like there's just always gonna be this
Right.
way or whatever. But I feel like there are like different different things we can excel in life.
Women
Well,
are
like,
women are proven to be better at multitasking.
Yeah, and I mean that's true. I think at a very basic level, men will dominate because of the strength factor. But
Very,
over time,
very basic level.
Right,
We're
right.
not talking like.
but over
education
time,
or-
right. Over time, once you get like more of a civilization, then yeah, women could be more equal in that way.
Like
Yes.
if we're hunting and gatherings for food and
Sure,
killing
sure.
bison,
You can kill 'em,
like
you got it, yes.
obviously.
If you look all the way back to the dinosaurs, the female dinosaurs are actually bigger and stronger.
Ooh,
But that's dinosaurs, not us.
We've been transformed
We didn't come from
into
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs.
We're not dinosaurs.
A lot of what is it?
We came from more like different types of mammals. Those are like,
Yeah, like lion.
Yeah, I was going to say most of the animals are.
I mean, define dinosaur though, because we're talking about like reptilian.
Dinosaurs have feathers, no?
We're talking about birds.
Birds. We're talking about chickens.
Yeah,
Birds.
chickens.
We're talking about how like a lot of
Birds.
American groups are led by the strongest male, but like a lot of them are maternally led. Like,
Yeah.
especially the Iroquois.
No, I know. I'm not saying. Yes, that's true. I'm saying like if it's very like let's say society breaks down tomorrow. Like
Anarchy.
right, like in an area, who's going to dominate? Usually the strongest. It might be females, but I'm saying like typically goes that way is because it's a stronger type situation.
We have